Welcome back in, everybody, to Bird 365, a Football Friday edition of the show, Week 14 of the NFL, joined now by Martin Frank from Delaware News Journal, DelawareOnline.com. Martin, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Football Friday?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, Martin. Have you ever felt less juice for an Eagles football game than this one? I feel like the game was last night. I feel like everybody was worried about that game more than they're worried about this game. Not inside the building, but outside the building.
Right. Like everyone kind of forgets, oh, wait, they got the Steelers next week. They just played the Ravens. And everyone forgets, they got the Carolina Panthers on Sunday at 1 o'clock. And I think, like, other than the last game against the Giants, this is like the last 1 o'clock game of the season. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. We've gotten a little bit luckier this year with 1 o'clock games, but
we had a lot of 1 o'clocks early, it felt like,
yeah.
and then they disappeared for
in a while.
Yeah. So we all hate them for obvious reasons, but when you're a good team, you play in the better windows, and the Eagles are obviously a good team. You got to see, presumably, if you didn't see the game, I assume you watched some of it, two of the better teams in the NFC. Where do you think the Eagles stand after watching the Lions persevere against the Green Bay Packers?
I think the Eagles are as talented, if not more so, than any team in the NFC.
There we go. Ooh, yeah.
But that home field advantage for the Lions is going to be tremendous. Like if the Lions end up with the number 1 seed and they're playing the Eagles for the NFC Championship in Detroit, that place is going to be like beyond loud.
Yeah. Tell them how loud that place is, Mark.
And that's when they've been bad.
Yeah.
Like, they have never hosted an NFC Championship game. I tell people it's kind of like back in 2004 season when the Eagles hosted the NFC Championship game against Atlanta, and pretty much like any Phillies home playoff game. I mean, it's intimidating, and the Eagles will have to play like a totally perfect game to beat the Lions in Detroit if it's the NFC Championship. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying it's going to be like if that game were to be played in Philadelphia, the Eagles would have a huge advantage because A, the Lions are not an outdoor team, and B, the fans in Philly are, as loyal, as dedicated as anybody's in the NFL. I mean, we all know that. So, the Eagles definitely want to get the number 1 seed.
I agree, and it looks like an uphill battle to do that right now. Martin, what do you think of the styles? Because a lot's been made of this Eagles offense, and as dominant as it's been and as great as it's been and the record-setting performance of Saquon, there is a lot of questions about their ability to pass the ball, and maybe that's just because they haven't had to right now. They've been able to handle teams, but how do you view the styles of the Eagles, who are obviously a run-dominant team, and the Lions, who are also run-dominant, but they're a little bit more versatile in their offense?
Yeah, they do it differently. I mean, they use 2 guys, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs is kind of like more your pass catching, guy out of the backfield who's got great speed, and Montgomery kind of powers his way up the middle, and Saquon does both. So, you kind of get 2 for 1 with Saquon. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I see like the biggest difference between the 2 quarterbacks. I mean, Goff and Jalen Hurts. I mean, Goff isn't going to take off and run like Hurts does, which obviously makes Hurts a lot more dangerous. But like, I'm watching that game last night, and Goff doesn't miss a pass.
No, he doesn't. I said, Martin, you have to get him off his platform. If he's got time, you're cooked. He's the most accurate quarterback in the NFL.
I think I saw something like he completed his last 13 passes.
Yeah, 13.
Like 32 for 40. He's like right around 75% for the year. I mean, I don't know what has gotten into him the last couple of years, but wow, he looks like he's hard to stop. Like he can even get on the move, throw off balance, different arm angles, and still complete passes like 10, 15 yards down the field. He's going to be tough to stop. I mean, the Eagles are going to have to play like a really good game in order, if they were to meet up with the Lions in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are guilty, myself included, of assuming it's going to be Eagles Lions in the NFC Championship game, and it probably will be, but there are a couple teams that could do the dirty work for you in the Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings. Maybe they have a big game and maybe Detroit gets knocked out early. I think that's the best case scenario for all involved. All of a sudden, then the Eagles would be at home in that type of situation. So we'll have to see how things shake out. In between, boy, I want this team to get better passing the football, Martin Frank, and they're going to get Devontae Smith back. Now, on paper, it says Eagles have the best rushing offense. Carolina is near the bottom of the league. They're terrible defending the run. All right, just go run the ball. I look at it differently. I'm like, this is a perfect chance to get your, I don't want, they can't call it a glorified scrimmage, but I can. Why don't you work on stuff you're not doing well? That's how I would look at this game. Can the Eagles afford to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, even in games where they're going against teams with a great run defense, like the Ravens this past week and the Steelers next week, you still have to run the ball. So it's kind of like the same philosophy here against the Panthers. Yes, I think they're 31st in run defense. They're actually not much better in pass defense. I think.
Yeah, they're not. They're like 26th.
Yeah. But like, you still have to pass the ball. Like, you have to establish that because that makes the run game that much more effective and vice versa. So, yeah, I mean, you obviously want to like get in a situation where you get confidence in the passing game where you can Devontae Smith, assuming he's back, which he's been a full participant in practice all week, would signify that he will be. You want to get him involved because there have been some games where he hasn't done a whole lot. AJ Brown doesn't get as many targets as he's gotten in the past couple years. And, they've both been really good soldiers about it, saying we understand we're a run first team and, Saquon's the guy and, why would you change that? But, you got to keep these guys involved. You got to keep them happy. You got to spread the ball around. So, yeah, this would be a great game to kind of try to establish the pass and, nothing else Jalen Hurts as a pocket passer. You want to see him be able to connect deep with those guys. So this would be a great opportunity to do it. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, making them happy is icing on the cake for me. You got two players who are top 10 receivers in the NFL. That gives you a significant advantage to win football games by getting them involved. And that would be the one knock, obviously, on the Eagles offense. But let's go to the defense here, Martin. They're the number one defense in the NFL. What has stood out to you? What has impressed you the most about what this defense has been able to do? And will they be able to sustain this level of play through the end of the year?
Well, the one thing that's impressed me the most is Jalen Carter. I mean, not as much with his play. I mean, his play is incredible. I mean, we've all seen that ever since he was drafted, his rookie year. But just that he's playing like the entire game. He played all but one snap against the Ravens. He had a game, I think. I can't remember which one exactly it was. He played every single snap. He's played 96% of the snaps in another game. And that was kind of like the biggest question mark for him heading into this season because, last year he faded down the stretch. He admitted, he hit that rookie wall and stuff. And there is absolutely no sign of that this year. I mean, it's a huge credit to him. He got himself in top shape. He's playing tremendously. He's been the big, star on the defensive line for sure. And he's kind of been able to offset some of the losses they've had at edge rush just because of the push he gets up the middle, which is just as effective as, whatever pressure you get from the outside. So he's been tremendous. I mean, you can't leave out Zach Bond either. I mean, what the guy has done has been incredible considering that he's never really been an inside linebacker before. And here he is, I think he's fourth in the NFL in tackles. He's been great as well. But I would say Jalen Carter would definitely be the star of that defensive unit right now.
Yeah, and Washington was the game he played every snap, 66 snaps in that game. And he's just incredibly gifted. But for many years, as you know, in Philadelphia, Martin, they've been a rotational system up front. Um, and Bick's kind of different. I mean, other places like Max Crosby plays every snap and he has for years. And I think that surprises people because there aren't a lot of defensive fronts that do that anymore. But Bick's kind of in that category. And Jalen's kind of proven he can do it. And you don't want to take that type of player off the field if you don't have to. I'm a little concerned on the edge, though, because Nolan Smith got a whole boatload of snaps in Baltimore. He was okay and made some plays. And Jalix Hunt, obviously, because he has to, you're missing two players, Brandon Graham and Bryce Huff. Is it sustainable to just go with Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, and Jalix Hunt as a three-man rotation?
I think it's going to be pretty tough. They did sign Chuck Harris, off the Carolina Panthers.
Carolina revenge game, the big Chuck Harris revenge game. We haven't talked about that.
I think as the season, like as he gets more use, I think he'll kind of like ease into that rotation a little bit. I think they want to get him up to speed with the playbook and everything like that. I wouldn't be surprised if he played some down the stretch, make it at least a 4-man rotation. Maybe give him like 15 to 20% of the snaps just to give some of these guys a breather a little bit. But, it was interesting the other day, Vic Fangio was asked, like, can you get by with the 3-man rotation at edge? And he said he did it for like a whole year at San Francisco.
Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, the players they had at San Francisco were probably a little bit better than what the Eagles have right now. This is who they have. I mean, like you mentioned, BG's out for the year. Bryce Huff's on IR. I think he's eligible to come back the Washington game. That would.
Yeah, it's interesting. They kind of hope he's going to be back, but nobody knows if he's going to be back. It depends on how the wrist surgery went. But all of a sudden, Bryce Huff has become important.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to get him back.
Yeah.
But that's very, very, very iffy at this point, I would say.
Yeah. And also, like, you got a chance, like the last 2 games against the Cowboys and the Giants, depending on where the Eagles are in the standings and the conference and everything, like, if things are settled, you can kind of like work a few extra guys in there. Like, so I think like the main 3 guys will be pretty well rested for the playoffs. And then, at that point, you got to go with your best guys. So,
Detroit's got a lot of injuries. So it's all, I mean, everybody's got injuries at this stage. And you do have to persevere. They're going to have to persevere at safety this week, it looks. Reed Blankenship, very difficult to get through the concussion protocol in 1 week. It looks like he's not going to be able to go. Hasn't practiced at all this week. Avonte Maddox was working with the safeties yesterday. Boy, that got people upset. But what are you going to do? Tristan McCollum's going to start. That would be his first NFL start, Martin. His twin brother is very good in Tampa. Maybe it runs in the family. What do you expect out of Tristan McCollum?
Well, I mean, they like him. I mean, he was already ahead of Sidney Brown. So, they like him. And he had that huge pass breakup against the Ravens on 4th down in the 4th quarter. So, I mean, I'm sure.
In the locker room, CJ told him to catch the effing ball. So,
he was better off not catching that, though. Because
that's true. That's true.
Ended up with the ball like at the Ravens 42, I believe, as opposed to if he caught it, it'd be like maybe 50, 20 yards further back. But, I think, they like him a lot. I mean, he was playing ahead of Sidney Brown and stuff even before Sidney got hurt. So, I think he'd do okay. It's the 3rd safety where, you could have an issue. Avonte Maddox would probably be the next guy up. And he hasn't been great this year. I mean, whether he's been in the dime package or early in the year at nickel. So, the Panthers are going to test him. Can they test him,
Can
though?
they test him?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Bryce Young has played better since he's gotten back in the starting lineup. But, like, if you look at his passer rating over those 5 games, it's been, like, I think in the 80s still. So, but I mean, it's better than what it was before for him because he was in the 50s. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's funny.
2-3 in the last 5. I mean, and they played the
Yeah.
Chiefs close, which I think made people, you play the Chiefs close, and then they lost in overtime last week to the Bucks. So
right.
they've been playing a little bit better. You don't want to go to sleep on this team, but they're
Yeah,
not good.
It's funny. I asked Nick on Wednesday only because he went. I forget who. It was the second question, and the only reason I asked it was because he started talking about how well Carolina's playing recently, as we just talked about, and then I asked him, "Why do you think? What have they done? What have they been?" And he stumbled like you wouldn't believe, Martin. He was trying to come. He was trying to reach for something,
yeah.
and he couldn't come up with anything. So I thought that was a revealing part of it. I'm like, Lou Holtz used to be the best at that, talking up the weak opponents.
Yeah.
I think we got a little Lou Holtz from Nick Sirianni this week.
Yeah, he actually I remember that he actually made a pretty good point. Like, if you go back to Sirianni's first year,
He did. Yeah, you're right. That was a good point.
they were 2-5 and they
Yeah.
were awful, and everyone thought,
Yeah.
both staff should be fired. And, they turned it around. And that's kind of like what you're seeing now with the Panthers. I mean, they're 2-3 in their last 5 games, which is, better than what they were before. I mean,
Yeah.
So
Sirianni put out the blueprint for every team that sucks to think they still have a chance to be good.
Yeah.
yeah, and the Eagles have a habit of
Playing down. Yeah.
playing down. I mean, we all remember that Cleveland Browns game a couple months ago, where people were chanting "Fire Nick" at halftime, and they won by 4 points. And
People are evidently still chanting "Fire Nick."
Yeah.
Chris Canty on ESPN said, "Yeah, he still might get fired."
yeah,
I don't like Chris's odds getting
No.
that one right.
Chris
yeah,
will be wrong. Martin, how do you evaluate Jalen Hurts this year? As he's coming off top an MVP a couple years ago, led us to the Super Bowl. Now it's like it almost feels like the offense doesn't go through him as much this year. How do you evaluate what he's been to the team and his progression as the leader of the team?
Well, I go back to the fact that during their 8-game winning streak, he's only had 1 game in which he's turned over the ball. So is that a product of him just giving the ball to Saquon Barkley all the time and running when he has to? I mean, maybe, but that's what a good quarterback does. I mean, the problem early in the year when they started 2-2 and he had, like, I think 4 interceptions and 3 lost fumbles in their first 4 games is he was trying to force too many things. He was trying to make plays that weren't there, and he has not done that at all during this 8-game winning streak. So from that point of view, I think Jalen Hurts is playing great. I mean, you look at his passer rating since, during this 8-game winning streak, and I think it's like 116 or something, which is, tremendous. It's among the best in the league. I think only Lamar Jackson and I think Jared Goff might be higher, like during those 8 games. So he's been great. Like, he's done exactly what a quarterback on a top team needs to do. He's picked his spots. He's run the ball when he's had to. He's not throwing 30 times a game, but the Eagles don't need him to throw 30 times a game. And maybe that's a good thing because he's not really putting the ball in harm's way and everything. And you got Saquon Barkley. I mean, the guy's on pace to rush for over 2,100 yards, break Eric Dickerson's record. So why would you go away from that until someone shows that they can stop him, which they haven't? And of course, that's the big question. If someone does stop Saquon Barkley, can Jalen Hurts pass the Eagles to a victory? And, we saw that in 2022. He had an MVP caliber season. And we're seeing that this year. I mean, we haven't seen it that much this year, but we could. I mean, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are good wide receivers, both top 10 probably in the NFL when they're healthy. So, that's going to be the big test. Like if some team forces the Eagles to pass, can they do it? And I would think the answer is yes.
So your evaluation though is that it's more credit to Saquon Barkley and less of a concern about Jalen Hurts that they've kind of taken the ball out of his hands a little more. I mean, you get a guy like Saquon, okay, it's obvious. That's more your line of thinking
Yeah,
there?
I think that's a fair way. I think that's a fair way to put it. I mean, he's done exactly what he's needed to do for the Eagles to win. I know that sounds like a cliche, but yeah,
No, but it's true. You're right. I agree.
yeah.
No, well, yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit for his ability to win football games. I do think Nick kind of overstated in Baltimore when he said he should be in the MVP conversation. But I kind of look at it from this standpoint, Martin, in the fact that this was not the Eagles' plan. They brought in Kellen Moore to evolve this offense and get the passing game going with more motion, and then you have a complement with a great running back, and that part of it's worked out, and they can close games better and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is, at the bye week, they went backwards. They said, you know what, we got to scale this thing back.
Mhm.
It's worked. I give the coaching staff tremendous credit to say, all right, this is our best path to winning games, and all they've done is won games. So I give them credit. But how do you think Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie feel?
Well, I think it's more Jeffrey Lurie than Howie Roseman. I mean, Howie's the one who went out and got Saquon Barkley. So, yeah, I think Jeffrey Lurie's like, what are they doing? But, that's what you got to do to win. I mean, until someone shows that you can stop Saquon Barkley, you keep giving them the ball. And that's the thing, like in the fourth quarter, when they've had a lead, they can run off 5, 6, 7 minutes of clock all the time. And
Yeah,
by doing
can.
that, you're obviously running most of the time, but you're also throwing like short passes that are easily completable. I mean, you're not throwing the ball 30, 40 yards down the field. Like you remember that Seattle game last year where, they went deep at the end and was intercepted, and, Jalen and AJ Brown admitted that they improvised and
Yeah.
all. They don't have to do that. I mean, that's the difference. You get in the fourth quarter, all you have to do is run the ball, throw short, safe passes, and just drain the clock. And that's kind of what they've done. That's been their MO. And it's not pretty, it's not sexy, and they're not going to light up the score. Well, they are going to light up the scoreboard because they're still scoring 30 points a game, basically. But yeah, it's just different. Yes.
Yeah, and the thing that makes me concerned about it is that Lions team is putting up 31 points a game, best in the NFL. So you're not going to be in it. Like Martin, I said the reason this is working so well right now is because your defense, right? I mean, the Ravens had a chance last week to have a 2-score lead multiple times. The Eagles had 4 straight punts in that game, and I'm like, boy, if this defense didn't hold up, you'd be forced immediately to play a different style of football, and they haven't had to do that. So the defense is really a big reason I think they're able to do this. And when you go up against a team like the Lions, will that hold? I think that's where the questions are real and have merit.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, though, they have an offense that can hold the ball for like 5, 6, 7 minutes. So
True.
Jared Goff won't get as many chances, ideally. The problem is, like you said, if they, have their typical slow first quarter start and they're down 17-0 to the Lions, which they very well could be, that's a lot different than being down 9-0 to the Ravens, which they've been, or 6-0 in that first game against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, that's easily overcomable. But if you're down 17-0 at the end of the first quarter to the Lions in Detroit in that loud dome, and that might be too late. So obviously they need to get off to a better start, which has been a problem all year. But if they're close and they can just hold the ball, then the Lions don't get a chance. I mean, that's basically how it works. I mean, we saw that last night at the end. Dan
Dan Campbell, baby.
And Jordan Love never got another chance. So Green Bay didn't win.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about Dan Campbell's fourth down aggression.
Yeah.
The Eagles used to have this huge advantage in the Doug Peterson era. One of the major reasons they have their lone Super Bowl championship is because they were ahead of the curve from an aggression standpoint. They still are, but they're behind Detroit, clearly.
Yeah.
And I don't know how closely you watched yesterday's game, Martin, but the thing that stands out to me about Detroit, first of all, I agree with both teams. You got to be aggressive in the modern game. So I agree with both teams. But the thing that stands out to me about Detroit that the Eagles don't have is when they're on third down, you can see with Ben Johnson, he's already got the fourth down call in his head. Like, it doesn't matter what happens on third. He's ready to go. With the Eagles, I see some hemming and hawing. I see late play clocks. I see some confusion. I no longer think that's an advantage for the Eagles against a team like the Lions. And they used to be the team leading the curve, so to speak, when it came to aggression. Is that a problem for you?
Well, I look at it this way. The one time where the Lions did not convert on fourth down, they had a 4th and 1. It was at their 30-yard line in the fourth quarter, and they had Goff pitch it back to Gibbs, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was Gibbs outside, which I did not like, but he killed the play. The play was going to be quarterback sneak, and Green Bay did a good job covering up the A gaps, and then he killed the play. And I thought that was a bad adjustment.
But see, the difference with the Eagles here, I mean, I think if it was the Eagles situation, I think there's a good chance Sirianni would go for it, but it's 4th and 1, and we all know.
Oh, they're going to get it. Yeah.
They're going to do the tush push. They're going to get it.
But I don't know if he would go in that situation. That's my concern.
Well, it's 50-50. I mean, it's risky because obviously you're at your 30-yard line, and if you don't make it,
very risky. That's the point. Yeah, that's
if you're playing an NFC Championship game and you want to, keep the ball and everything. I mean, it's a risk they might take, but they have a play for it. That's the difference. Like the Lions, they're not going to do the tush push with Jared Goff no matter what. You said obviously the Packers kind of had all the gaps plugged and they had to pitch to the outside, which pretty much killed the play. The Eagles are still going to
they don't have to worry about that. I agree with that. But it just seems like more the 4th and 3 type plays, the 4th and 4 type plays. Like it seems to me like the Lions have a plan. Like they're going into third down. They already know what they're going to do on fourth down, and they know they're going. They're very convicted. I see the Eagles still hemming and hawing.
Yeah,
and part of it is probably because they get so much criticism.
Yeah, but I still think if it's 4th and 3, inside, on the plus side of the field, in the other team's territory and everything, the Eagles are going to go for it.
Yeah, typically.
They're going to go for it. I mean, and the Lions obviously do that. The difference also, I kind of got the sense that, let's say if the Lions are facing the 3rd and 8, they're playing for fourth down.
Oh yeah.
I think the Eagles are still 3rd and 8. They're trying to get the first down, and I'm well, if we get 2 or 3 yards, should we go for it? Should we not?
Right.
Lions already know. I mean, I agree with you in that sense. If it's 3rd and long, I think the Lions kind of have a plan that they have 2 plays coming, whereas the Eagles are kind of let's see what happens, and then we'll decide.
Yeah, Dan Campbell has stuck to his guns better than Sirianni because Dan had to sell his freaking house and move for over going for it. Nick Sirianni got some shit in the media, but he didn't necessarily have to do that. So credit to Dan Campbell for sticking to his guns. Martin, last question, man. How do you see this game playing out this weekend? Eagles Panthers Week 14.
I think at first it's going to be closer than people are probably going to be comfortable with, but I think by the end the Eagles are going to kind of pull away. I kind of predicted 37-22. So they kind of cover the point spread, but not by a lot. I just think like there's too much Saquon Barkley, and I think Hurts will kind of get, the passing game going with AJ. And, now that Devontae's back, I think that's going to be big. And, I like the way Grant Calcaterra's played, when they haven't had Dallas Goedert, which obviously they're probably not going to have this weekend. So I think the offense is going to have a big game. I think the defense, obviously they don't have. I mean, I think they're going to be good enough. Bryce Young might kind of surprise them a little bit at first. They might get off. The Panthers might get off to a pretty good start, but I think by the end, the Eagles will show that they're the much better team and pull away.
At M Frank NFL, make sure you follow Martin on the X platform. You can read him at DelawareOnline.com. Does a tremendous job covering this team. We're used to winning in Philadelphia, Martin, and I think they're going to win again. I think you're right. So just a matter of how much. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. And I will see you later today. You think Nick Sirianni's going to tell us Dallas Goedert's out in the morning?
I think you can take this statement to the bank right now. You'll get an injury report later. We'll see.
That'll be it. Martin, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, bud.
All right. Thanks for having me. Talk to you guys later.
Good stuff there from Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal. Make sure you guys
Nick is not going to let us know.
No, I know that was
but we know he's not playing.
That was funny by Martin. All right, everybody, final segment here, and we will give you our predictions. The much anticipated Johnny Mac and Big Z prediction for Week 14's matchup. Johnny Mac, coming to you first. We got a couple. Actually, let's hit the super chats, and then we'll do our predictions there in the final segment. Super chats here. Nate the God. Look at this. I like this name for you, John. J Mac Izzle. J Mac Izzle. Is this defense trending towards top 5 Eagles defense of all time? People keep saying the offense is starting slow, but the D starts slow as well. We don't wake up until we get punched in the mouth.
Well, I mean, if you frame it in just the fact they don't have a lot of number 1 defenses in the history of the Eagles, believe it or not. I mean, Buddy Ryan never had a number 1 defense.
Crazy to think about when you hear people talk about that gangrene defense.
Yeah, the number 1 defense, the last number 1 defense was from Bud Carson when he was the coordinator. And Jonathan Gannon had number 2. He was 12 yards off being number 1, I believe, in 2022. So from just that kind of standpoint, yes, it is one of the best Eagles defenses to this point ever. But boy, it doesn't feel that way. But that's the game. That's the modern game. Like if you think about the Reggie defense and Reggie White defenses, they seem better, but statistically matched against their peers, they're not better for the most part. But yeah, that's because the game has changed. They're playing a different game. So statistically, yes, if they keep it going. But are they as good as that the Seth Joyner group since my buddy Seth? And no. But it's a different game. You're not allowed to be that good, to be frank. So it's kind of how you frame it.
Agreed. Good question there, Nate to God. Appreciate you checking in, brother. And I like that nickname for Johnny Mac. A little J Mac Izzle. I like it. Billy D says, need a game-winning drive. Mahomes 1, Hurts 2. Oh, come on.
Well, I don't think you need a game-winning drive. I'm not one of those that wants to test things just to
No, he's
test
saying
things.
if we need a game-winning drive, he'll take Mahomes.
Oh. Well, I definitely take Mahomes 1. No,
Yeah.
I'm not taking Jalen number 2. No,
I'm not either.
No. I mean, no. I mean, no.
Game-winning drive, you typically need to pass the ball a lot.
Yeah. Not right now. No, I would not take Jalen number 2. I don't know if I take him in the top 10, to be honest. And that
You said then who's number 2? Who'd you take number 2? Probably Josh Allen for me. Maybe Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is freaking nasty in the passing game, man. He's getting underlooked this year because of that shitty team, but he's having an MVP level season as a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Love's a guy who, if he's that, I'm a big Jordan Love guy right now. I think he's got a tremendous up. Now he's got to get more consistent, but
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Dan Campbell did what he did last night because he didn't want to give Jordan Love 45
Yes,
seconds.
that's correct. That
I
is
mean,
100% correct.
I'm not
And
saying
Emmanuel Acho put out a tweet like scathing him, and he's like, "If you just take the field goal there, Jordan Love has to go 35 or 40 yards to try and tie the game.
yeah, that's
And
easy.
if you miss the field, or if you miss or you don't go for it or whatever however he worded it, then Jordan Love can go 40 yards and win the game." And I'm like, or you can go for it and not give him the fucking ball at all. I mean,
Yeah,
what the hell?
exactly.
You left out the most
And
important one.
I'm not saying he's number 2. I'm just saying you saw a head coach who did what he did because he didn't want to
Agreed.
give the
Yeah, I see
football
what
to
you're
Jordan
saying.
Love. Yeah. So there's a bunch. Joe Burrow, you just mentioned. Um, Sam Darnold's won 2 games in 2 weeks. Last drive in overtime, last minute drive, 4th and 7 conversion, 6 of 6. Yeah. I mean, there's a guy who's done it twice in 2 weeks. Small margin of error, one play going the negative way, you lose the game. Guy's done it twice in 2 weeks. I'm not saying he's number 2. Burrow, Josh Allen.
Yeah, you're just giving context. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. All right,
Yeah.
John, let's get into our predictions, man. Eagles, Panthers, 3-9 Panthers, 10-2 Birds at the Link, a 1 p.m. Sunday matchup. Keys of the game and your prediction, my friend.
Keys to the game, show up on time. Being a little bit facetious, but yeah, I think this is pretty much as easy as you get in the NFL, at least. I think it's a blowout. I think they cover the spread. It may be a little bit untoward at the beginning, as Martin kind of said, as the late wake up call factors in. I'm going to say 34-17-ish Eagles.
I like that. That's a pretty good score. I had a score that I modified. I originally had a score, but I gave the Panthers a little bit more credit than maybe I did in my original score was like 27-7. I didn't think the Panthers were going to do much against our defense, but I modified it. I went 31-13. I think the Eagles win. I just don't see how, one, this defense sucks, so the Eagles should be able to score at will. And two, I don't see how they're going to score points against the number 1 defense in the NFL.
No, like I said, I like Vic against young quarterbacks.
Yeah.
He tends to confuse them. And I don't think Bryce Young has played well in general. He's played better, as I said, but I don't think he's played well in general. I think I've said it a couple times this week. I think it's an indictment to him that the best part of this Panthers team is probably their offensive line, which is typically not the case when you're talking about bad football teams. And that tells me bad things about the quarterback. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I spent a ton of time watching Bryce Young this week, because I haven't, but I don't think that's a good sign for Bryce Young. The fact that I assumed, in fact, I told you that earlier this week, Zander, I assumed they had a bad offensive line.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
Yeah, their offensive line is not bad.
So that concerns me. But that's a Panthers problem. They have to figure that out.
I like it. Any score predictions in the chat we can get? Daz has 34-10. The big one. 31-13. I'm pretty close to you, Daz. It sounds crazy, but I mean, I don't know what the Panthers are going to do. Chris Scott says 41-13. Wow, Chris. I don't think we've put up a 40 burger yet this year. And I saw somebody tweeted online the Eagles are going to drop a 50 burger, and somebody said, well, the Eagles haven't dropped a 50 burger since November of 2017. So I'm going to take I'm going to go against those odds.
I'm always going under with the 50 burger.
Yeah,
anybody. Not to say Miami had 70 last year, whatever they scored. So, but I'll always take the under if you're playing the odds.
Yeah, 34-13. Yepa says 33-17. All right, Johnny Mac, great show today, my friend. Good breakdown, as much as we could do, obviously, of this game. Good reaction to last night's game as well. Get down safely to the NovaCare Complex, and we will talk to you on Sunday, my friend. Big Week 14 matchup, Johnny Mac.
All right, let's do it. Football Friday. Thanks for listening, everybody.
I don't know if we got an F-bomb in today on a Fuck It Friday other than the one I just
I
gave
don't
you.
think we did.
Yeah.
That's a bad job by me.
That's a
I
bad
should
job.
have thrown it at my first referee
Yeah, you were
tangent.
going off early. I thought it was coming then. You gave him a stop it, but we didn't get the F-bomb in there. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Hit that like button, and we will catch you later on today in the National Football Show with Big Sills, and I'll be on there at 3:30. So looking forward to talking to you guys then. See you next time, everybody.